Well, let's switch over to the U.S., joined by a member of Dignity, Human Rights and Peace Organization from Washington, Dr. Randy Short. Dr. Short, thank you so much for being with us. It seems that this is becoming more and more of a normal occurrence. Now we have another young man in the U.S. being shot down, which appears to be that he was unarmed and that they did not have a warrant for his arrest. Why are we seeing a greater frequency of this? And why would the police do this? What happens exactly that they think that they can get away with these type of actions? And thanks so much for being with us, sir.
Well, Marcia, my belief, at least from watching, we had the case of Amadou Diallo, if you recall, many years ago.
Yes.
A man who was shot 27 or more times, presenting his identification to the police. They thought his wallet was a gun. Back in November 2006, you had Sean Bell, who was a man preparing to get married, and the police shot 50 times into a vehicle, killing the man. And over again, the police are exonerated. So essentially, in New York and in other large urban centers, if you're dealing with persons who happen to be of African descent or Latino, the police more or less have a right to kill.
Well, what does that say about human rights right now inside of the United States itself? We know Washington prides itself on at least saying that it is the leader of human rights in the world. However,
well,
how
can... That's a lie. It's always been a lie. How can a society that is based on slavery and genocide and exploitation and imperialism claim to lead anything? So there's a professed America that puts out these lofty ideas, and then there's an actual America in which maybe 80 million poor Americans live in. And of that, maybe 50 millions of African Americans and 60 million Latinos in this country may not be treated equally. So we had a civil rights movement in this country because things were wrong. We had a civil war because slavery was the basis of the economy. We've had labor wars for people to fight to be able to earn enough money. So when we talk about democracy, this ends up being basically a veil to justify the corporatocracy of the very rich elite who super exploit Americans based on class and color and treat other people in foreign nations more or less the same way.
Well, Dr. Short, how likely are we to see a violent reaction or riots? We know back in the 90s with a similar case, of course a little bit different, but with Rodney King, and we saw major riots in Los Angeles. And of course last year we saw another example of that when in
London.
Yes, in London, when Mark Duggan was...
Just to share with you, you know that the Brits have now had people from New York come over to show them how to further oppress the Muslim and African populations in the United Kingdom. I want to say that before I move on. I think that anything is possible given the times in which we're in. We have, and I live in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the only city in the United States, major city, where 2/3 of black men are employed. In cities like Chicago, less than 50% of black men have jobs. Mm-hmm. So, and we have a war, a fake war on drugs, which is really a war on blacks. In the 60s, you had a war on poverty that was supposed to do something to reform the society of its racial stains. And as soon as the Democrats stepped out, the Republicans came in with this war on drugs, which has been a war on black and brown and poor people. So I'm calling you from a country where at least 1 million black men or more are in jail. America is a society where 20 to 25% of the world's prison population is in the United States. Roughly half of that is black, which means for every prisoner in the world, every 100 prisoners, 12 of them are African American. So in terms of violence, anything is possible when people can't have jobs, when we have a foreclosure crisis where as many as 2 million people face losing their homes. What will people do? And the state seems to be ratcheting up. If you follow the American news, now the Pentagon is offering weapons of war to police forces across the country. One city just got a tank. What do they need tanks for? Except for there's some sense that the people who are hungry, the people who can't find work, the people who are suffering, and in particular, the people who had so much faith that a black president would fundamentally change the reality, and they find that their hands are full of ashes, might be unhappy. And in New York in particular, they have a system of searching and harassing hundreds of thousands of black and Latino men every year that is demeaning, it is cruel, it is brutal, and people get tired. In the 60s, we had hundreds of riots in this country because people got to a point where they couldn't take it. So you might see intifadas in America's cities because people are unhappy. People don't want a war with Iran. They don't want a war in Syria. They don't want all these things that are happening as money is being taken from people and used to kill people in foreign places. So, frankly, the solution is the people within the United States need to rise up, and they need to challenge America's democracy at places like the United Nations, at places like the Organization of American States, and call people. They claim that democracy matters, then show it.
Okay. And on that note, we appreciate you being with us, Dr. Randy Short from the Dignity, Human Rights, and Peace Organization in Washington. Appreciate you joining us.